Hello again, marketing attribution enthusiasts. This is another episode of Attribution Radio. I'm your host, Gail Buffington. We've got a great topic today, really pertinent to a lot of marketers out there, and that is getting alignment with finance teams. We often see this gap between marketing and finance as this vast chasm with both sides speaking completely different languages. But the only way to lasting success as a marketer is to find ways to bridge that gap and meet CFOs where they are. Luckily, we have digital marketing expert Keary Phillips, a fantastic strategy practitioner across a gamut of marketing tactics and techniques to help break this down for us. He gives us his unique perspective on how to talk so your finance team will listen.
So I have Keary Phillips, he's seasoned CMO. I met him, 15 years back or something like that as part of engagement at Visual IQ actually. And he's gone through many very well-recognized organizations where he was marketing leadership, Allstate, WellNow, where he is right now, Fidelity, Angie's List, Discover Financial Services. So he's got a lot of great brands that he's worked for, and he's picked up a ton of best practices in how to navigate complex analytics and attribution and enterprise setups. And we were talking about a variety of topics, and I thought it'd be phenomenal to have him come and educate us on how do you think about communication with specifically the finance teams, right? A lot of times you're working in a big enterprise setup and matrix, and how you communicate marketing performance in a way that finance can embrace and synthesize goes a long way in keeping funding and keeping sort of your programs going, right? Now, how do you do that in a constructive way? I thought Keary would be a phenomenal speaker for us to help us kind of get under that. So, Keary, how would you introduce yourself? Who are you as a leader, and maybe what's your fashion or style of leadership?
Sure. Yeah. I would say that I am a digital native. Have been in sort of digital and performance marketing since the very early days. I am very curious by nature and a continuous learner, which is part of why I've stayed in sort of the performance marketing and digital realm for most of my career, because as everyone I'm sure in this class knows, that is in just a constant state of change. So it's always fresh, it's always exciting. That makes it challenging. You have to stay on top of things, but it's I think it always keeps it interesting and exciting. So if you have sort of that internal sense of intellectual curiosity, then it's been great for me over the course. Today is what I would consider to be a fundamental and foundational piece of any good measurement and advanced attribution program. You guys have been through all the class to understand the different ways that you can test incrementality and incremental contribution and advanced marketing mix modeling, to understand the efficacy and impact of all of the work that you're doing from a marketing standpoint. But one of the critical inputs into that is kind of that financial component and that financial understanding, because it doesn't matter what your kind of incremental count is if you don't have the right if you don't have the right quantitative economic kind of input into what that is. It's just a number, and it loses a little bit of its power and credibility. So what I have found is that if you, as close you can get to finance and sort of how your company looks at, ultimately, not just revenue, but profit, and tie that back to what you're doing, the stronger your case is always going to be to get incremental budget, to maintain budget when there are cuts across the company. I'm sure as a lot of you have seen, marketing is one of the first places that gets cut because most companies look at marketing as a cost center, not a profit center. We need to flip the script on that and make sure that we can build the case so that finance and other leaders in the organization look at marketing not as a cost center or as an expense, but as a profit center that is generating incremental return in revenue, and that then will insulate your budget and kind of the work that you're doing from ever being cut. So it's an important conversation, and building that relationship with the finance team, who are generally the ones responsible for creating the P&L sheets that get socialized up through the executive leadership teams and communicated to either your board or your VC company, or if you're a public company, to Wall Street. You want to be speaking the same language and using the same view of profit that they're using versus like a marketing view, because they never line up, and then you think your results are different than what they're actually seeing. We generated all this traffic and all these sales, and then like sales are actually flat, and it's like, well, where is the disconnect here? So super important. This is an example from the current company that I'm at, and this will vary by industry. It will vary by kind of category and whatever your means of generating revenue is. In e-commerce, it could be like average order value or something like that. Marginal return on whatever the product is that you're selling, cost per service. You can sort of translate it to any different category. The key point is that it is capturing all of those important components of the cost that end up getting you down to not just total revenue, but your actual profit margin. And that will vary also depending on how your company might express that. We express it in terms of EBITDA. Other companies may kind of express it in a different means, but ultimately it's profit versus kind of gross revenue is what you want to get.
Have you in your career gotten to a point where you can have this conversation with finance, where you've broken it down like this, and you can start the marketing execution with a pretty good understanding of what the economics need to look like?
I would say that in most cases, when I have explored this in my career, finance has been very open. Like it is rare for them to be, approached by marketing to ask for like help to create something like this. Again, like most marketers, I was an English lit major and a history minor. Like I am not a finance expert. I know the pieces of it that I need to know to support the business, and can read a P&L sheet, which I would make sure that everyone, I would encourage everyone to make sure that they can at least have that level of understanding. But going to them and kind of asking to partner with them to help create this, because you want to make sure, it just shows your dedication to wanting to create the greatest return on the investment. And by building that collaborative kind of partnership and giving them some input into it, it's like, oh wow, they do care about this. They want to, want to help us hit the targets. They're generally more than happy to help create something like this. Right. Just because it's so rare for this to kind of happen. But
wow. Zaid, you had a point? Did you want to make a point?
Yes, I do. I was typing away actually. I mean, as someone who right now, one of the big things we have to do, it is to get the adoption of our modeling, inputs and results and the attribution, and have those conversations with FP&A. Like that is like priority number one, because that will really help get that sort of standard in terms of what we want to achieve through MMM and all the newer testing formats versus last click, which FP&A usually relies on. I'm going through this as well. I have a quick question though. I mean, should we do these calculations downstream, or are there opportunities to integrate some of these factors in the modeling itself?
So this is an example. Depending on what your product or service is, like you may only have one CAC model because that's sort of the view of your customer acquisition. We have, I think, like 18 or 20 different CAC models, because our revenue generation is variable based on geography, because the reimbursement rates that we get from insurance companies, which is that top line, that cost per visit, that rate can vary from anywhere between $120 to $160 depending on where we are. So we can't have a one size fits all. How we bid on paid search in Rochester, New York versus Chicago, Illinois is very different, because the revenue potential, there's differences in labor costs and whatnot. All of that is sort of factored in so that we're right sizing our media buying and our optimization to those types of nuances. It may be different, it may be different depending on like the type of product being sold or whatever, but there can definitely be more nuances to it than just sort of. The main point here is that, it takes a little work, and it can maybe be uncomfortable because it's not a relationship or a collaborative effort that most marketers are accustomed to doing. But success is in our control if we are proactive and make sure that we develop those relationships and get finance on board as a sort of proactive and active partner in all of this and help you demonstrate that you can generate meaningful, ROI in the context of how they look at the world and how they're reporting that information up to the rest of the organization. So again, I can't emphasize enough how helpful it is in any of those conversations around, budget reductions, how much should we be spending. If you've got this as sort of a foundational piece of what you're doing, built into your measurement models and everything else, then, when you're forecasting what the possibilities are, again, you always know that you can be forecasting and projecting based on delivering a profitable return. And where some of the negotiation then comes in is, well, again, we can grow more, but it's going to be at a little bit less rate of return than what you typically would desire, but it's still going to be profitable. So if everyone is okay with that, then we can invest, 20% more and, still generate the additional growth we're looking for, just at a slightly lower sort of margin level. All of this just kind of goes to supporting and building your case. If the CFO doesn't get it, explain it better and explain it in their language. If your CAC is going up, be responsible and, own up to it and say, all right, we can't deliver the return that we need right now. We should pull back spend while you figure out how to optimize and do more. Like there can't be this like budget hubris where, you feel obligated to spend everything that, you might have given. There could be other market dynamics. And I think just sort of being a responsible steward of that investment means that in some cases, it may mean that you are proactively recommending that you pull back because you're not generating the rate of return that is desired for the organization. So, in most cases, you hope that it's going the other way, but it certainly can go that way. But you will gain a lot of credibility if you, kind of raise your hand and actually proactively call that out versus finance looking at the sheet and saying, what the hell is going on? Why are we, why are we losing money here? Whatever, right? So LTV, again, it's a big one, figure that one out and make sure that you're incorporating it because it can be super important. And then just stay curious. And if there's something you don't know, a missing piece of it all, you've got to sort of be curious and proactive to identify what those potential blind spots are.
Translate a financial business currency CAC to a search CPA through the multiplier. We covered that. I don't know if the specific question is if they don't have the language for it. If your search marketer doesn't have the EBITDA language to even speak because she doesn't know how to say EBITDA and profit and then in a way that's credible. And then, of course, you need more education. When Keary said that at the very beginning, you need to have some P&L education so that they can understand these words and they can translate that and talk in those in that language with some level of credibility, so that when they end up talking to a finance partner, they don't sound like they're talking Greek and Latin, right, when your finance partner is speaking like English. So,
and even if they don't, as long as they know that like I need to achieve a $6 or $30 or $50, whatever the outcome is, that already has all of the EBITDA and CAC built into it. Like they just need to know that they need to hit that number, and then they know all the controls that they would use in the platform to be able to hit that number, which already has the EBITDA sort of built into it,
Yeah, I think like the finance language definitely is one of the obstacles that I've observed so far. The other way, it's like different channels might have different like cost to like really do that like CAC, because like search, like you can use like bid up, like what is the bidding strategies, and then you can get very close to like the TROS or like TCPA in this case. However, like consider those kind of like outbound like TV or like YouTube, the kind of things like they couldn't like really hit those numbers, and then eventually just like normalize like how aggregate like all channel across, and then we might be able to achieve the CAC in this case. So I think like finance language is like one piece. However, the other piece is like the complexity of like how different channel might manage to understand the language. And
I've seen some companies manage to like do a portfolio manage, to a CAC from a portfolio basis. But if you've got an advanced measurement and attribution model that you're running, like you should be able to get to a point where you have channel level understanding of these things. And again, some of the ones that you referenced are more difficult to sort of directly measure, and you need to use some of the more advanced methods of understanding the efficacy of YouTube versus, Facebook or whatever, especially if you're not in like a DR, sort of direct, pathway situation. But the outcome is the outcome. Like, it doesn't matter what channel is, it's just you may be able to deliver more volume more productively through certain channels than others based on the overall economics of the channel, the inventory cost or whatever else that goes into it. You might have different conversion rates for different channels, but ultimately, like, your CAC target is your CAC target, and it's just the amount that you would invest in different channels to achieve that CAC target is going to vary depending on channel contribution to everything, if you're looking at it from a channel basis standpoint.
Wrapping things up today, I think the biggest takeaway here is that marketers have to be proactive. They have to take that first step in creating that open, bi-directional relationship between marketing and finance. Huge thanks to Keary Phillips for his insights, including this valuable advice. Companies often see marketing as a cost center rather than a profitability center. So it's your job as a marketer to flip that script and deploy your resources and generate meaningful ROI. Catch you all in the next episode of Attribution Radio. I'm Gail Buffington, signing off.